Hi, Paul here from pmharrison.com. Today, I'd like to share with you my top tips as a professional copywriter in Hamilton, Ontario. These are tips that you can use to create excellent copywriting on your own, or things that you should be aware of when working with a professional copywriter such as myself. So, let's get straight into it. There are 15 tips. Firstly, the most important thing for any piece of copywriting, or indeed any piece of writing of any nature at all, is to have a very clear and definite purpose to the writing. This is as true for a 100,000 word novel as it is for a marketing postcard that might be as little as 30 words. Novels have a premise, which is the main purpose that the writer is expressing throughout the entire novel. And advertising materials have a message too. So whatever piece of writing you're working on, it is very, very important that you have a clear and a definite meaning. What I like to do is to put this meaning at the very top of the sheet that I'm working on, or the top of the file, Word document, or whatever you're using. One sentence that defines the overall purpose of the piece. Now, I do this when I write novels, and I do it when I write advertising materials, and every piece of writing that I do, from blog posts to even poetry, actually. So that is the first and most important thing when dealing with any piece of copywriting. Secondly, always remember your responsibilities as a writer. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean, responsibilities as a writer? Your responsibilities as a writer vary dependent on the nature of the writing that you're doing. For instance, if you're writing a white paper for your industry, then it's your responsibility as a writer to have every detail researched, every fact correct. If you're writing something of a creative nature, such as poetry or novels or something like that, it's your artistic responsibility to delve into personal beliefs and emotions and things that inspire people, and to get into that sort of thing. If you're writing a blog post, then it's your responsibility to take care of the technical SEO aspects, as well as the humanistic aspects of what people expect from your blog. Whatever you're writing on, you will invariably have certain responsibilities as a writer, and you should make sure that you meet those at every step. Copywriting rule number 3 is that you must speak your audience's language. Now, this is a stumbling block for many people, even some of my fellow professional copywriters. Many writers try to write over intellectually, which can be fine if you're writing for scholars or for people who are in your industry, who are very knowledgeable about the subject matter that you're writing about. However, some people write intellectually for an audience that is new to the subject, or even an audience which is young, or an audience that has English as a second language. You always must speak the language of your readers. Now, this is even true if your readers happen to be robots. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is search engine optimization. If you are writing for the internet, then part of your readership is the robots that Google and Bing and etc. send to interpret your site. So it is your responsibility as a writer to make sure that you're always speaking your reader's language, which may vary to your own. Copywriting rule number 4, when it comes to your first draft, just do it. Nike that first draft. Just do it. All good writers, all experienced copywriters know, in fact, all writers of all natures, even novelists and etc., know that a first draft is there only to get written. The entire purpose of a first draft is that it be done. Good writing happens during the editing process. So if you're stuck, if you're writing whatever it is, could be a business letter, it could be a brochure or anything like this, and you're stuck in your first draft and you find that you're trying to make it perfect and it just won't come out perfectly, just put the words on paper. Even if they seem terrible, just put the words on paper. The editing process is the time when your writing gets sharp and when it gets good. So in the first draft, literally just write it. Copywriting rule number 5, edit, 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 and when you think you're done editing, edit it one more time. You can never edit a piece of writing too much. Sometimes if you're dealing with an artistic piece of writing, then there's an argument that too much editing will remove the personality of the piece. But for professional business style writing and for advertising writing and things like that, you'll find that very rarely will you over edit something. Far more likely you will under edit it. So no matter how many times you edit, there is always space for one more go. Number 6, copywriting rule number 6, organize your thoughts before you start writing. Now, a moment ago I said that the first draft should just be written, so you do have the option when writing the first draft of any piece of writing to just kind of spew it onto the paper. And you can organize your thoughts that way. But certainly before you get to the editorial stage, you do want to make sure that your thoughts are out and that they're organized. Now, a lot of writers, including myself, we like to use things like post-it notes so that we can individualize our thoughts, put one thought on a post-it note or one thought, wherever it happens to be, and then we can go through and organize them individually in order to see how they might come together to form the overall piece of writing. The important takeaway from this is that if there is a thought in your head that pertains to this writing, it should be on a piece of paper or a file somewhere, and it should be an individual line expressing that thought that you can then organize sequentially in order to create the flow of your writing. So if there's a thought, put it down and then organize it. Copywriting rule number 7 is to know your personality as a writer or as a brand. Now this is incredibly important for every piece of writing, I think. For any branded material, for instance, your advertising materials, they must express the personality of your brand. Oftentimes, the piece of writing that you send to somebody, let's say you send out a postcard, like today I just received a postcard from a realtor in Hamilton, and that was the first time that I'd ever seen this realtor or heard of them. So of course 100% of my perception of this realtor comes via the writing on that postcard as well as the picture. So it's incredibly important that that piece of writing express the brand personality, because that's how your potential clients are going to judge your entire brand. And as I said, this is important for other types of writing too. If you're writing a business letter, for instance, you might be writing a letter to one individual who is very important to your work, to your business, and you're going to want to make sure that your writing communicates yourself and your work in a favorable way. You want to put forward a positive, likable, professional personality. And this is even true in novels and in poetry. As any kind of artist, you have your artistic personality, the way people perceive you. So if you're doing a creative project, it's important that that project express the brand personality or the artistic persona that people have come to expect and to associate with you and your work. So always know your personality and always do one edit just to read through to make sure that the writing is communicating the personality that you want to express. Copywriting rule number 8 is to simplify, do not overcomplicate. Okay, this is a big rule. It's a rule which many writers get wrong, even experienced writers who should know better. The temptation is to make your writing sound overly complicated and overly intellectual. It's obvious why people try to do this. We want to prove that we're smart people, right? We want people to look at us and think, wow, there goes a clever person. However, many people write over-intellectually, over-complicated. It's much better to simplify rather than to complicate, because the purpose of your writing overall is to express a singular purpose, which we discussed a moment ago. And the more succinctly you can express that purpose, the better, the more effective the copywriting will be. So always simplify, not overcomplicate. Plus, the more simplistic your writing is, and the more simplistic your message is, the more people are going to understand it, and the more potential customers you're going to bring, the more leads you're going to generate for your business. Copywriting rule number 9 is to always write scannable content. Now, there are some instances in which this probably won't matter so much, such as a postcard that has about 50 words on it. However, you should always write in such a way that people can scan read. This is incredibly important, especially on the internet, where people's attention is divided because they've got numerous tabs open, and it's generally harder to focus when looking at a screen anyway. So make sure that you write scannable content, which means subheadings, properly organized flow to the writing, and generally, especially for the internet, paragraphs and sentences that are not too lengthy, such that people can easily follow where they are, as opposed to getting lost in the middle of a big chunk of text. So scannable content will always win the day, especially on the internet. Copywriting rule number 10 is to research absolutely everything. Now, again, this is as true for artistic things like a novel as it is for a white paper, as it is for a blog post. The more you research something, the better the writing will be, period. Obviously, for something like a white paper, which delves into real details on your business and your industry, it's going to be incredibly important that you research everything. That goes without saying. But also, artistically, in a novel, if you're writing about a scene, a location or something, you need to know about that location to write about it. Or let's say for a blog post, it's been proven, studies have shown that the more highly researched a blog post is, the more likely it is to garner backlinks, which if you're into SEO, backlinks are one of the most important factors that Google uses to rank content. So if you want your content to rank highly in Google and other search engines, you do very well to make sure you have thoroughly researched it. However, this can even be true in pieces of writing that you don't think it's true for, such as if you are creating a piece of writing for, let's say a giveaway. Now, you might have a postcard that you're sending out that advertises this giveaway, sign up for our magazine and be entered into whatever. Now here, the research is actually hidden because you're dealing with research into your buyer's persona and into your customers. In this kind of marketing, the research isn't on the paper so much as it is into the psychographics of the people who you're targeting. So in all kinds of writing, it is incredibly important to thoroughly research everything that you write about, and even to research the people who are reading it, that being your customers and your potential clients. Copywriting rule number 11 is always read your work out loud. Now, this is something that I think every writer knows, every professional writer. However, it's also something that if you're not a professional writer and you just kind of write as a function, then you might wonder quite what the point in that is. Why do you need to read something out loud when you can just read it on the screen or on the page? However, scientific studies have shown that when you read something out loud, when you vocalize it, you become aware of different things than what you're aware of when you read it on a page. For instance, you'll notice grammatical errors or stylistic errors, or if not even errors, just the fact that when you read something out loud, it no longer has the right personality. When you read something out loud, you notice different things to when you read it on the screen or on a page. And that's why you're always best to do at least one edit in which you read the work out loud. Copywriting rule number 12. Make everything positive and active. Again, this is a universal rule of writing. It applies for absolutely everything except some types of kind of academic papers. So, especially in marketing and in novels, you want to make the writing active. Now, this is easy to understand for a novel because in a novel, you're telling a story and characters are literally doing something that you're writing about, so it's always active. However, it's also true for marketing. For instance, let's say you want somebody to sign up for your newsletter on your blog. You want to use doing words, verbs. You want to say things like, sign up now to download our free ebook. You want to use active words that imply action, because by hearing or by reading those active words, people are more inclined to act. It's a very psychological thing that when you read action words, you actually are motivated to take action. So that is number 12. Number 13, always remember that you are your writing. So to many of your readers, you are entirely the piece of writing that they're reading. I mentioned earlier the realtor who had sent me a postcard. So I received this in the post, never heard of the guy, and his entire business, as far as I'm concerned, is expressed on that postcard. So he, to me, is that postcard. Do you understand? So always bear in mind that your writing is you. When people read your writing, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a piece of advertising material, whatever it is, people are reading those words, but they're associating that with you. And with I say you, I mean your brand, your company, whatever it is. So bear in mind that your words are so important because they represent you to some of your most important customers, clients, and etc. I just like to bear that in mind because it reminds you why writing is so very, very important and why it probably is worth hiring a professional copywriter. As I said, I am a professional copywriter in Hamilton, Ontario, so certainly get in contact with me if you're interested in that. Copywriting rule number 14 is to be your own worst critic and explore the opposing arguments for everything. So I'll give an obvious example of this and then some less obvious examples. Let's say, for instance, that you are a political journalist and you're writing a piece exposing Donald Trump. Now, I'm being neutral here. I'm just using this as an example. So don't shoot the messenger. However, if you're writing an article that exposes Donald Trump and you want to state negative things, the best way to write that article would also be to be aware of the positive things about Donald Trump, because only in that way can you express the full story. Now, what the heck does that have to do with copywriting, with advertising? Well, studies show that one of the best ways to garner people's trust in your company is to forthrightly express the reasons why they might oppose your company or your product. So let's say, for instance, that you sell, well, I'm in Hamilton, so let's say that you run a factory. You run one of the factories that is polluting the air. Now, you might be inclined in any piece of writing to ignore the fact that you're causing pollution. However, when you do that, when you only focus on your positives and ignore your negatives, studies show that your customers, your readers, your clients, etc., are less inclined to trust you and to believe what you're telling them because you're not being forthright with the whole truth. It's much better to explore the opposing arguments as well, to be forthright with any negative. So, for instance, with that example of a factory, you would be wise to talk about the ways in which you are reducing the amount of pollution. And in that way, you're accepting and forthrightly communicating one of your clients or your customers or general people's reasons for opposing your company, and you're turning it into a positive. And that's true for all advertising. You always want to be aware of the potential negatives, the reasons people won't want your product, and then to turn that into a positive. Never ignore the reasons why people will not like you or your product. Always accept it and turn it into a positive. That is a definite art, which a professional copywriter such as myself will be able to help you with. However, just know that if you turn a blind eye to people's objections to your company or yourself or your business, it will definitely not be in in your best interest. And finally, copywriting rule number 15 is to always use a proofreader. Any professional writer who is honest will tell you that even though they have years of experience in writing, they always miss something. It is impossible to see absolutely everything. And this is true even in the absolute best writers in the world. I mean, Stephen King has famously said that that he uses a proofreader for absolutely everything that he ever pens. And the reason why is simple, is because no matter how trained your eyes are in reading, you can't beat a set of fresh eyes. The more sets of fresh eyes you put on your work, the more feedback you get, the better your end copywriting product will be, the better your copy will be. So always use a proofreader. Now, for many projects, you won't need to hire a proofreader. Certainly, there's a lot of writing that you could just have your spouse or a friend read over. Many business letters, for instance, don't really require professional proofreading, but they do require somebody to take a look over it. And of course, if it's a more important piece of work, then it is certainly worth hiring a professional proofreader, which is a service that I do here in Hamilton, Ontario. So those are my top 15 rules for effective copywriting and indeed writing of any nature. They're universal for everything. And I hope you find these rules helpful. If you would like to discuss your projects, or if you would like to hire a copywriter in Hamilton, Ontario, then visit my website, pmharrison.com. I'll put a link below in the description. And thank you for watching my video.